We're there in Proverbs chapter number 25, and the verse I want us to focus on this morning to begin with is the last verse in this chapter. Look at verse number 28 of Proverbs chapter 25. Verse number 28 says, "He that hath no rule over his own spirit is like a city that is broken down and without walls." Now, the concept of a city having walls is a little bit foreign to us. I mean, you know, we live in the city of Dunedin. Where exactly are the walls? We don't have walls around us in the city that we live in, and that's pretty normal in the time and place that we live in. Most cities you find don't actually have walls around them. But of course, back in the time the book of Proverbs was written, it was much more common to have a city with walls. Okay, I mean, often what cities were often like city-states, if you like. It's like instead of having a country, it would just be one city, and it would have a wall around it. I mean, you might remember back when we studied in the book of Genesis last year. Remember we came across a bunch of different kings at various times. Remember there was a battle of 5 kings against 4 kings, and I mean, do you think that it was 9 countries were fighting with each other? No, it wasn't. I mean, basically what it was, they were cities. I mean, 2 of the kings that were mentioned there was the king of Sodom, was one of the kings. Another king was the king of Gomorrah. We know what they were. They were just clearly cities. Okay? When the Israelites came into the Promised Land, the first city they fought against was the city of Jericho. Now, what was Jericho surrounded by? A wall. Surrounded by a great big wall. In fact, actually have a look there now. Turn back to Joshua chapter number 6. Joshua chapter number 6, and have a look at the account here. Joshua chapter number 6. Joshua chapter number 6 and verse number 1. So it says, "Now Jericho was straitly shut up, because of the children of Israel, none went out and none came in." So it was locked up. This whole city was locked up. No one was going in, no one was coming out. "And the Lord said unto Joshua, See, I have given into thine hand Jericho, and the king thereof." So once again, you've got a king of the city, "and the mighty men of valour. And ye shall compass," or surround, "the city, all ye men of war, and go round about the city once. Thus shalt thou do 6 days. And 7 priests shall bear before the ark 7 trumpets of ram's horns, and the 7th day you shall compass the city 7 times." So go around the city for 6 days, and on the 7th day you go around 7 times. "And the priests shall blow with the trumpets. And it shall come to pass that when they make a long blast with the ram's horn, and when ye hear the sound of the trumpet, all the people shall shout with a great shout, and the wall of the city shall fall down flat, and the people shall ascend up every man straight before him." And it's interesting when you actually look back. I mean, archaeologists have found Jericho, and what they've found is walls that have collapsed. Okay, "And Joshua the son of Nun called the priests and said unto them, Take up the ark of the covenant, and let 7 priests bear the 7 trumpets of ram's horns before the ark of the Lord. And he said unto the people, Pass on, and compass the city, and let him that is armed pass on before the ark of the Lord. And it came to pass, when Joshua had spoken unto the people, that the 7 priests bearing the 7 trumpets of ram's horns passed on before the Lord, and blew with the trumpets, and the ark of the covenant of the Lord followed them. And the armed men went before the priests that blew with the trumpets, and the rearward came after the ark, the priests going on and blowing with the trumpets. And Joshua commanded the people, saying, Ye shall not shout, nor make any noise with your voice, neither shall any word proceed out of your mouth, until the day I bid you shout, then shall ye shout." So it must have looked pretty strange to the people inside the city. You've got this army that's come, and what does it do? It goes around the city, no one's making any noises, just quiet. That's it for the day. And then the next day they do the same thing. So look and see what it says, verse number 11. "So the ark of the Lord compassed the city, going about it once, and they came into the camp and lodged in the camp. And Joshua rose early in the morning, and the priests took up the ark of the Lord, and the 7 priests bearing 7 trumpets of ram's horns before the ark of the Lord went on continually, and blew with the trumpets, and the armed men went before them. But the rearward came after the ark of the Lord, the priests going on and blowing with the trumpets. And the 2nd day they compassed the city once, and returned into the camp. So they did 6 days." So imagine that, a whole week practically. They just march around, blowing with the trumpets, nothing else really happening, that's it. "And it came to pass on the 7th day that they rose early about the dawning of the day." It's interesting they get up early all the time. "And compassed the city after the same manner 7 times. Only on that day they compassed the city 7 times." So this time instead of just going around once, they go around 7 times. "And it came to pass at the 7th time, when the priests blew the trumpets, Joshua said unto the people, Shout, for the Lord hath given you the city. So notice, they did this sort of strange thing. Basically, this city had a great big wall. They marched around the city on 7 days. On the seventh day, they blew with the trumpets and shouted, and the walls fell down flat. The city was defenceless. It was overturned by this army. In fact, if you keep on reading, they even set it on fire. Now, if you've got a city that is without a wall, what that pictures, it's defenceless. It's got nothing to protect it. And what's going to happen to it? It's going to get destroyed. Well, if you look back in Proverbs chapter 25 again, the parallel that we see in Proverbs chapter 25 and verse 28 is that if you don't rule over your spirit, then you'll be like that defenceless city without walls that gets broken down. Now, we don't live in walled cities surrounded by armies waiting to destroy them. But we do live in houses, don't we? This might be something that might be easier for you to picture. We live in houses. Can you imagine what it would be like to live in a house that had no walls? Now, maybe it's just still got frames, so the roof doesn't fall down, okay? So you've got some sort of framing bits there, but there's no actual walls there. Well, what would it be like? What would keep the bad weather out? When that cold southerly blows, just goes straight through. Maybe the driving rain, you might find that was going right through, Also, animals could come and go. There's a few animals live around our place. They could come and go. They could mess up the place. We've got a cat that we never let inside, or rarely let inside, because she tends to make a mess. She's got a digestive problem, shall we say, and so she's constantly regurgitating stuff. And so we sort of keep her outside, keep her in the garage, so that's where she makes most of her mess. Well, if she was allowed free reign, she'd be just all over the place. Okay? But other people's animals, wandering dogs and cats and hedgehogs and whatever else, they'd all just, mice, rats, they'd all be there. Okay? Because there's nothing to keep them out. Okay? It would make a great mess, a mess of the place. What about this though? What about if you went out? You go out for the day, you go off to work, you've got some things to do, and you leave the house. Well, anyone could just wander past and take all your stuff. Do you think your belongings would be safe? No, I don't think they would. And what about this, there'd be nothing that would stop someone from taking every single thing you've got. They could just go and pile in a truck and off they go. But also, what about when you went to bed at night? Would you feel safe if you lay in bed at night and there was no walls? A house that's got no walls, it lacks protection from the weather, it lacks protection from robbers, or just from bad people that can roam around at night. Did you know that bad people can roam around at night? Don't need to turn there, but in 1 Thessalonians 5:7 it says, "They that be drunken are drunken in the night." And the fact is, at night time, there's often people that are roaming around getting up to no good. It says in John 3:19, "Men love darkness rather than light because their deeds were evil." People do bad things at night, and that's why it's a good thing at night to be able to shut the door, shut the house, lock it all up, and you go to sleep and you're safe and sound in your house. But if you're out in the open, who knows what's going to happen? So you see, in the same way that a city or a house that doesn't have walls isn't safe and is in great danger of being destroyed, in the same way as that, if you don't rule over your spirit, then your life is in danger of being destroyed. Not only that, but the thing is, we actually need to have some walls in our lives that can serve to protect us. Just like a house or just like a city, and protect those that we love from danger. Turn, if you would, to Nehemiah chapter number 2. Nehemiah chapter number 2. You find Nehemiah not far before the book of Psalms. You've got just after Ezra and before Esther, you've got Nehemiah. Nehemiah chapter number 2. Nehemiah chapter number 2 and verse number 11. Nehemiah chapter number 2 and verse number 11. Nehemiah chapter 2 and verse number 11. You see, now Nehemiah, just to give you a wee bit of background, he was the king's cupbearer. And basically what he does is he asks permission to return to Jerusalem because he wanted to repair the damage that had been done. Jerusalem had been destroyed, okay? So it says in Nehemiah chapter 2, verse number 11, it says, "So I came to Jerusalem and was there 3 days. And I rose in the night, I and some few men with me. Neither told I any man what my God had put in my heart to do at Jerusalem. Neither was any beast with me, save the beast that I rode upon. And I went out by night by the gate of the valley, even before the dragon well, into the dung port, and viewed the walls of Jerusalem, which were broken down, and the gates thereof were consumed with fire. Then I went on to the gate of the fountain, and to the king's pool, but there was no place for the beast that was under me to pass. Then went I up in the night by the brook, and viewed the wall, and turned back, and entered by the gate of the valley, and so I returned. And the rulers knew not whither I went, or what I did, neither had I as yet told it to the Jews, nor to the priests, nor to the nobles, nor to the rulers, nor to the rest that did the work. Then said I unto them, Ye see the distress that we are in, how Jerusalem lieth waste, and the gates thereof are burned with fire. Come and let us build up the wall of Jerusalem, that we be no more a reproach. And so see what he's saying here. He's saying that, look, we need to build up this wall. We need to build up the wall of Jerusalem. He says that we be not a reproach. Now, a reproach, that's not a word we necessarily use a whole lot in English. It's, if someone's a reproach, it's like they're spoken badly of. They're spoken badly of. I mean, just if you have a look in Nehemiah chapter number 6, for example, Nehemiah chapter number 6 and verse number 13, Nehemiah chapter number 6 and verse 13 says, Therefore was he hired, that I should be afraid and do so and sin, and that they might have matter for an evil report, and that they might reproach me. So notice that it's saying, if an evil report reproach me, they're saying bad things about him. And it also says in Luke chapter number 6, Luke chapter number 6 and verse number 22, Luke chapter 6 and verse number 22, Luke 6, excuse me, Luke chapter 6 and verse number 22 says, Blessed are ye when men shall hate you, and when they shall separate you from their company, and shall reproach you, and cast out your name as evil for the Son of Man's sake. So notice what that's saying? So to be reproached, it's people are saying bad things about you. They're casting out your name as evil. Okay, that's what's being a reproach is. He's saying, look, why we need to build up these walls so that we're not a reproach, so that people aren't saying bad things about us. You see, because of the state that they were in, they were badly spoken of. But if they built up the wall, that would take away that reproach. And the thing is, if you repair the walls in your life, that you can also take away some of the reproach. Because if you don't have walls in your life, like a city broken out without walls, people are going to say bad things about you because your life is going to be a mess. You're going to be like that city that's in just a terrible state. Now understand, you'll never take away all of the reproach. Okay, because the fact is, we will actually still get reproached for the name of Christ, the Bible says, but we shouldn't be reproached because our lives are bringing shame to the name of Christ. It's okay to be reproached because, that person, they're a zealous Christian and they're this and that and the next thing. But we shouldn't be reproached because, we're things that God would say are bad things. Okay? Now the thing about walls, just thinking about the whole concept of walls, many people think of walls as being a bad thing rather than a good thing. I remember years ago I went to a Promise Keepers event, and this is not something I recommend at all. It's ecumenical sort of organisation. They have Mormons and all sorts of people involved, and etc. But I remember there was a song that they used to sing there, and the song was called "Let the Walls Fall Down." Let the walls fall down. By His love, let the walls fall down. It was all about bringing the walls down. And kind of part of what they're saying, they're talking about, like, for example, between different races. There shouldn't be walls separating, well, this person's black and I'm white, or this person's this and this and that. And you can understand that, because, the Bible says, He's made of one blood, all nations of men for to dwell upon the earth. The colour of your skin is of no significance whatsoever, okay? But that was kind of one of the things. But, of course, the other thing that they were really saying about letting the walls fall down was let the walls fall down between, because it was an ecumenical gathering people from all different churches. Let's all come together. Doesn't matter if you're a Catholic, doesn't matter if you're a Mormon, doesn't matter if you're Pentecostal, doesn't matter what, all come together. Break down those denominational walls. Now the fact is, I don't believe in denominations. Denominations are a bad thing. We should be Bible-believing Christians. But the Bible makes it really clear that when you've got people that deny important parts of the Bible, that we shouldn't actually have anything to do with those people. We should not associate with those people because, just so you say, I'm not making it up. It says in Romans, for example, Romans, I think it's Romans chapter number 16 is one of the places that talks about it. Romans chapter number 16. Romans chapter number 16 says, "Now we beseech you," Romans 16:17. Now I beseech you, brethren, mark them which cause divisions and offences contrary to the doctrine which you've learned, and avoid them. It says, look, avoid people. But notice it says, contrary to the doctrine which you've learned. In other words, all division is not wrong. We need to understand that. Jesus himself He says, think I come to bring peace on the earth. I came not to bring peace by the sword. He says I bring division. In fact, I think the word division is actually mentioned 4 times in the New Testament, and it's all about Jesus, every time. Okay? And so he came to bring division. That's what he did. But, so if we're dividing over doctrine, if we're sticking with what the Bible says, that's a good thing. But there are people that bring division because they're changing the doctrine. They're changing what the Bible says. And so we should separate those from those people, okay? And so, yeah, it's an important thing that wars of division can be a good thing. You know, I mean, just like walls around your house can be a good thing, to keep the baddies out. You know, maybe to keep the children in. I mean, imagine about when the children were younger. If you didn't have walls, if you didn't have doors, what would happen? They'd be roaming. It's a good thing to, keep them locked up when they're little and before they learn, where they should go and where they shouldn't go, etc., etc. Okay? And so the thing about it is, when it comes to a city, walls are a good thing. When it comes to a house, walls are a good thing. When it comes to your life, walls are a good thing. You see, we should have walls of protection in our lives. They stop bad things from getting in. Look if you would at Proverbs chapter number 4. Proverbs chapter number 4 and verse number 23. Proverbs chapter 4 and verse number 23. Proverbs chapter 4 verse number 23 says, "Keep thy heart with all diligence, for out of it are the issues of life." That word keep, it's talking about like keeping your heart. It's talking about like guarding your heart. You can think of it as like building a wall around your heart. It says, "Keep your heart with all diligence, for out of it are the issues of life." And then it says, "Put away from thee a froward mouth, and perverse lips put far from thee." So it's saying, look, if someone's speaking what's perverse, someone's speaking what's froward, put them far away from you. In other words, don't be listening to that. So it's actually saying guard what you hear. Look at the next verse. It says, "Let thine eyes look right on, and let thine eyelids look straight before thee." So that's saying what? Guard what you see. Guard what you look at. You see, because we need to be careful what we allow into our lives by putting walls to protect. Because what we see with our eyes, what we hear with our ears, it actually goes into our heart. That's how things get into your heart. They get into your heart through your eyes, and they get into your heart through your ears. So we should be careful. Don't allow certain things. Put walls of protection around it. Turn if you would back to Nehemiah again. Look at Nehemiah chapter number 3. I should have told you to keep your finger there. I should have kept my finger there myself. Nehemiah chapter number 3. You see, things are still going to come into your life, just to understand. Things are going to come into your life, but you should control what comes into your life. Nehemiah chapter number 3, look at verse number 1. Nehemiah chapter 3 and verse number 1 says, "Then Eliashib the high priest rose up with his brethren the priests, and they builded the sheep gate. They sanctified it, set up the doors of it, even unto the tower of Meah. They sanctified it unto the tower of Hananiel." So notice, they're building up the wall, but notice what they've got here. They builded the sheep gate. So you've got a wall, but it has a gate in it. Now, what do you think a sheep gate would be for? Sheep. Okay, so this is probably a gate that maybe the sheep, maybe you bring the sheep in, and they might keep them in behind the wall, keep them safe, and then you take them out to feed them, whatever. Okay, you've got this sheep gate. Okay, things maybe go in and out of that. Look down at verse number 3. "But the fish gate did the sons of Hassenaah build, who also laid the beams thereof, and set up the doors thereof, the locks thereof, and the bars thereof." So here we've got a fish gate. Okay, a fish gate. Now imagine that's probably just for bringing things in. Okay, you're bringing things in through the fish gate. You're probably not, because you probably don't have fish inside the city, other than when you just brought them in, and when you bring them in, you eat them. Okay, so you got the fish gate there. Look at verse number 6. Look at verse number 6. It says, "Moreover, the old gate repaired Jehoiada the son of Paseah, and Meshullam the son of Besodiah, and they laid the beams thereof, and set up the doors thereof, and the locks thereof, and the bars thereof." So here we've got an old gate. Now, that means this gate has probably been around for a long time. Okay? But does that mean, just because it's a gate that's been around for a long time, does that mean therefore it's a good gate? Because, I mean, the sheep gates seem good. Bring in the sheep in and out and stuff, those are good things. Now this old gate, it doesn't really say whether it's a good thing or a bad thing. But just because it's been around for a long time, that doesn't necessarily mean it's a gate you should have in your wall. I mean, think about this. There's a gate that a lot of people would have in their walls. Think about the gate of television. There's a gate of television. Now, there was a time when it was a new thing, but now. It's not. It's an old thing. Okay, and many people have this particular gate in their wall. It's a gate that allows things to come in, to their life. But what comes in through that gate? What happens when you turn on the television? I mean, when you turn on the television, isn't it pretty likely that you're going to hear bad language if you turn on the television? Yeah. Well, it says in Colossians 3:8, it says, "But now you also put off all these: anger, wrath, malice, blasphemy, filthy communication out of your mouth." Okay? Filthy communication, put it out of your mouth. Now, that's saying put it out of your mouth. But the fact is, when you're listening to filthy communication, what comes in at the ears goes where? Into the heart. And then doesn't the Bible say, out of the abundance of the heart the mouth speaketh? So what you hear goes in your ears, goes into your heart, and then it's going to come out of your mouth. Okay, so those are bad things, you know. I mean, have a look at 2 Peter. Look at 2 Peter chapter number 2. 2 Peter chapter number 2. 2 Peter chapter number 2 and verse number 7. 2 Peter chapter number 2 and verse number 7. 2 Peter chapter number 2 verse number 7 says, "And delivered just Lot, vexed with the filthy conversation of the wicked." Sounds like there's a bit of filthy communication going on where Lot was living, because of course he was living in Sodom, wasn't he? It says, "For that righteous man dwelling among them in seeing and hearing." Notice what's happening. Things are coming into his eyes, things are coming into his ears. "Seeing and hearing vexed his righteous soul from day to day with their unlawful deeds." So Lot, he vexed his righteous soul. Why? Seeing and hearing. Now what else? What else comes in through the gate of television? How about immodest dressing? Immodest dressing. You turn on the television. See, because the Bible says it's a shame to be naked. Do you know that? The Bible says, if you look in Isaiah chapter number 20, Isaiah chapter number 20 and verse number 4, Isaiah chapter number 20, Isaiah chapter 20 and verse number 4, Isaiah chapter 20 verse number 4 says, "So shall the king of Assyria lead away the Egyptians prisoners and the Ethiopians captives, young and old, naked and barefoot, even with their buttocks uncovered, to the shame of Egypt." So notice that. It's to your shame to be naked. He says, look, young and old, naked and barefoot, even with their buttocks uncovered. If your buttocks are uncovered, would you be ashamed? You should be. I would be. You should be ashamed to have your buttocks uncovered. Have a look at Revelation chapter number 3. Revelation chapter number 3 and verse number 18. Revelation chapter number 3 and verse number 18. Revelation 3:18 says, "I counsel thee to buy of me gold tried in the fire, that thou mayest be rich, and white raiment, that thou mayest be clothed, and that the shame of thy nakedness do not appear. And anoint thine eyes with eye salve, that thou mayest see." So notice, it says the shame of thy nakedness. Throughout the Bible, it's a continual theme that we see nakedness and shame are associated all the way through. In fact, the only place it's not is right back at the start with Adam and Eve. It says they were both naked and they weren't ashamed at the very start. Why? That was obviously before sin, but also it's a husband and a wife. Okay, it's not a shame to be naked in front of your spouse, but who wants to be just naked out and about? But the fact is that out in the world, people do go around naked all the time. And one of the reasons they do that is because that's what they've seen on the television. Okay? I mean, if you look at old photographs, you know, I mean, if you look at old photographs, I think they put them out in the newspaper, like from 100 years ago. The ODT puts out these old photographs. And you can see pictures, for example, from 100 years ago when people went to the beach. When people went to the beach and went swimming. And do you know what they wore when they went swimming? They were clothed. They actually wore clothes when they went swimming. Whereas now, if you go swimming, by definition, you strip off and you're naked when you go swimming. But in the old days, you know, women wore long dresses, you know, men were covered up, you know. And so things have changed, and one of the reasons they've changed is because of what people have been exposed to. What people have been exposed to. And that's what's happened. You can look historically. You can look at, you know, when people they introduce things on television, it's like a shock factor. People first say it's like a shock. But then, you see it again, it becomes more normal. You know, the first time it might come on television and they'll take it off. Because it's uproar. But then it comes back again. It becomes back again, and people just get used to it, you know. I mean, would you invite someone over to your house to talk with your children if you knew they were going to use filthy language, which we saw before, or if you knew they were going to just strip off in front of them? Would that be someone you'd be inviting over to talk to your children? No. What about if they were going to smoke and drink alcohol, and encourage your children? Hey, yeah, this is good. This is good stuff. Would you invite them over? Well, isn't that what TV does? It does. In fact, I've read this out before, but I like to read this from time to time. This is a poem that's about television, and it's quite it's interesting when you think about it. This poem about television. It says. Well, it's like a story, actually, rather than a poem. It says, a few months before I was born, my dad met a stranger who was new to our small town. From the beginning, Dad was fascinated with this enchanting newcomer and soon invited him to live with our family. The stranger was quickly accepted and was around to welcome me into the world a few months later. As I grew up, I never questioned his place in our family. Mum taught me to love the Word of God and Dad taught me to obey it. But the stranger was our storyteller. He would weave the most fascinating tales. Adventures, mysteries and comedies were daily conversations. He could hold our whole family spellbound for hours each evening. He was like a friend to the whole family. He took Dad, Bill and me to our first Major League Baseball game. He was always encouraging us to see the movies and even made arrangements to introduce us to several movie stars. The stranger was an incessant talker. Dad didn't seem to mind, but sometimes Mum would quietly get up while the rest of us were enthralled with one of his stories of faraway places. She would go to her room, read her Bible and pray. I wonder now if she ever prayed that the stranger would leave. You see, my dad ruled our household with certain moral convictions, but this stranger never felt an obligation to honour them. Profanity, for example, was not allowed in our house, not from us, from our friends or adults. Our long-time visitor, however, used occasional four-letter words that burned my ears and made Dad squirm. To my knowledge, the stranger was never confronted. My dad was a teetotaler who didn't permit alcohol in his house, not even for cooking. But the stranger felt like we needed exposure and enlightened us to other ways of life. He offered us beer and other alcoholic beverages often. He made cigarettes look tasty, cigars manly, and pipes distinguished. He talked freely, too freely, about sex. His comments were sometimes blatant, sometimes suggestive, and genuinely embarrassing. I know now that my early concepts of the man-woman relationship were influenced by the stranger. As I look back, I believe it was the grace of God that the stranger did not influence us more. Time after time, he opposed the values of my parents, and yet he was seldom rebuked and never asked to leave. More than 30 years have passed since the stranger moved in with the young family on Morningside Drive. But if I were to walk into my parents' den today, you would see him sitting over in a corner waiting for someone to listen to him talk and watch him draw his pictures. His name, we always call him TV. And I think that's if you picture someone doing the things that television does, that television portrays, would you have that person staying in your house? Is that the person you'd want to come and be your lodger? Or would you send them packing? You'd send them packing. But the fact is, it shows the bad influence that TV has had in people's lives. You might say, well, hang on, I came to hear the Bible preach. I didn't come to listen to some small story about TV. Well, turn to Psalm 101. Turn to Psalm 101. This is what I like to call the TV Psalm. Psalm 101. Psalm 101. Verse number 1 says, I will sing of mercy and judgment. Unto thee, O Lord, will I sing. I will behave myself wisely in a perfect way. O when wilt thou come unto me? I will walk within my house with a perfect heart. Notice, this is talking about how you can have a perfect heart in your house. What does it say, verse 3? I will set no wicked thing before mine eyes. You see, if you put the TV on, you are bound to set wicked things in front of your eyes. He says, I hate the work of them that turn aside. It shall not cleave to me. You see, the things that you see on the TV, they will cleave to you. Once you've seen some image, it doesn't disappear. It cleaves to you. Verse number 4. A froward heart shall depart from me. I will not know a wicked person. Do you know wicked people? If you watch the TV, you do know wicked people. I mean, you feel as though you know them. I mean, they've never met you, but you feel like you know them. These wicked people that are doing all sorts of, ungodly things on the television. A lot of the popular media stars, the movie stars, the sports stars are some of the most wicked people that you'll come across. Okay? I mean, verse number 5. Whoso privily slandereth his neighbour, him will I cut off. Him that hath an high look and a proud heart will not I suffer. Do you see evidence of pride on the TV? Absolutely, it's all about pride. Verse number 6. Mine eyes shall be upon the faithful of the land. Is that who you see on the TV? Do you see the faithful? Are they the faithful people there? They're faithless people. That they may dwell with me. He that walketh in a perfect way, he shall serve me. Look at verse number 7. He that worketh deceit shall not dwell within my house. Notice that. The person who's working deceit, the deceiver, shouldn't be dwelling in your house. He that telleth lies. In fact, I've heard that's a good name for the television. Tell-lie-vision. Tell-lie-vision. That's a good name. Yeah. He that telleth lies shall not tarry in my sight. I will early destroy all the wicked of the land, that I may cut off all wicked doers from the city of the Lord. Even that verse is applicable. I will early destroy all the wicked of the land. No, I'm not saying go out and destroy these people. But what I am saying is, look, maybe you should think about destroying your television. I destroyed our TV about 10 years ago. 10 years ago, I took our TV and I destroyed it. I closed up the gate. The gate that was letting things into our house that shouldn't be there, and I closed it. Took the TV and destroyed it. And I'm glad that I closed up that, because it stopped the whole pile of rubbish coming in. There was a whole pile of rubbish coming in. Or maybe another way you could look at it is I took some rubbish out. Look back at Nehemiah again, Nehemiah chapter number 3. There's another sort of gate, Nehemiah chapter number 3. Nehemiah chapter number 3 in verse number 13. Nehemiah chapter 3 and verse number 13 says, the valley gate repaired Hanun and the inhabitants of Zanoah. They built it and set up the doors thereof, the locks thereof, and the bars thereof, and 1,000 cubits on the wall unto the dung gate. But the dung gate repaired Malchiah, the son of Rechab, the ruler of part of Beth Hakkerem. He built it and set up the doors thereof, the locks thereof, and the bars thereof. So notice, different sort of gate here. We had the sheep gate, we had the fish gate, we had the old gate. Here we've got the dung gate. Now what do you think the dung gate is for? Is that for bringing things in? Or is that for taking things out? Yeah, it's for taking things out. And so we need to take out the things in our life that have a bad odour, that have a bad smell, the things that stink. We need to get them out. Okay? We need to take those things out of our life. I mean, look at things that smell bad. Look at Romans chapter number 3. Romans chapter 3 and verse number 10. Romans chapter 3 and verse number 10, we're all familiar with that. As is written, there is none righteous, no, not one. And then it says in verse 11, there is none that understandeth, there is none that seeketh after God. They are all gone out of the way, they together become unprofitable. There is none that doeth good, no, not one. Look at verse 13. Their throat is an open sepulchre. That's like an open tomb. Their throat is an open tomb. What would a tomb be like? Wouldn't it smell bad? Wouldn't it? Their throat is an open sepulchre. With their tongues they've used deceit. The poison of asp is under their lips, whose mouth is full of cursing and bitterness. You see, it's when you are full of these things, it's like an open tomb. If you've got a mouth full of cursing and bitterness, it's like having an open tomb that it stinks. It smells really bad. Look at Ephesians chapter number 4. Ephesians chapter number 4. You see, we should put these things out of our life. Ephesians chapter 4, verse number 22, says that you put off concerning the former conversation the old man, which is corrupt according to deceitful lust. If something's corrupt, what does it do? If it's corrupt, it stinks. And be renewed in the spirit of your mind, and that you put on the new man, which after God is created in righteousness and true holiness. Wherefore, putting away lying, speak every man truth with his neighbour. For we are members one of another. If you want to speak the truth, then maybe you should be watching things that are true. In fact, we sang about it before. Lots of things are true. Lots of things are honest. We're supposed to think on these things. Verse number 26. Be ye angry and sin not. Let not the sun go down upon your wrath, neither give place to the devil. You see, when you're constantly angry and wrathful, you're giving a place where Satan can come into your life. You know, it's like there's a breach in the wall. There's a breach in the wall. It talks about in Ezekiel, I sought for a man to stand in the gap, make up the hedge. Okay? We need to do that. We need to stop Satan having a place in our lives. Verse number 28. Let him that stole steal no more, but rather let him labour, let him work, working with his hands that the thing which is good, that he may have to give to him that needeth. We should be working, not being lazy. Verse number 29, let no corrupt communication, there it goes again, let no corrupt communication proceed out of your mouth, but that which is good to the use of edifying, that it may minister grace unto the hearers. And grieve not the Holy Spirit of God, whereby ye sealed unto the day of redemption. Let all bitterness and wrath and anger and clamour and evil speaking be put away from you with all malice. But in contrast, be kind one to another, tender-hearted, forgiving one another, even as God, for Christ's sake, hath forgiven you. You see, we need to put off that old corrupt man. Don't be bitter, don't be wrathful, don't be angry. Turn back to Proverbs chapter number 16. Proverbs chapter number 16. Remember we saw in Proverbs chapter 25, that the person who has no rule over his own spirit is like a city that's broken down without walls, and we saw that walls were good. Well, if you go look at Proverbs chapter 16, verse number 32, Proverbs chapter 16 and verse number 32 says, he that is slow to anger is better than the mighty, and he that ruleth his spirit than he that taketh a city. You see, it's very important we have walls in our lives, but Proverbs 16:32 tells us, just like Proverbs 25:28, that it's important to rule over our spirit. You see, ruling over your spirit is talking about controlling the inner person. It's talking about ruling over yourself. We might use the term self-control. Now, this isn't talking about the new spirit that the believer gets when they get saved. Remember, our spirit is made alive, or the spirit that's at war. You've got the battle between the flesh and the spirit. That, when it's saying here, ruling over your spirit, that's not what it's talking about. This is just talking about the inner you. Because self-control is controlling yourself. Have you ever seen a child, for example, exhibit a total lack of self-control? Maybe throw like a temper tantrum. What about an adult? You ever seen an adult do that? Now understand, when we talk about that, you might say, I've seen you get mad. I've seen you get angry. I've seen you behave in a way that you shouldn't behave. I admit, I'm not perfect. Okay? If I only preach sermons about things that I had sorted out, there'd be really short sermons. Okay? A good example I could use is, think about the example of squash. I was actually playing squash on Wednesday, and when I was playing squash on Wednesday, I wasn't playing particularly well, but the thing that kind of really annoyed me was I lacked self-control when I was playing squash. Now, do you think when you lack self-control, do you think it makes you play better, or do you think it makes you play worse? It makes you play worse, And there were some things annoyed me earlier on in the game, and then later on I was still thinking about that, and I was still annoyed, and my play was bad. I made lots of mistakes, made lots of errors. Okay? And you see it all the time. When there was a guy, remember, I used to play with, and this guy had a really bad temper. And he would just, like if a ref gave a decision he didn't like, he would just spit the dummy. And it was guaranteed the next 6 points, he would just lose just like that. He would just, the return of serve would just be straight in the tin, because he was just angry, he's just whacking it as hard as he could. It would just give away half a dozen. But you see that all the time. You see that all the time, where it doesn't improve people's play. It makes them worse. But why? They're not ruling over their spirit. You see, if you think about the term, you might have heard the term self-discipline. You see, the word discipline can refer to like correction or spanking or chastening, as the Bible calls it. Yes, God does. He does correct his children because he loves them. But rather than be corrected by God, we should actually grow up and correct ourselves. Look, if you go to 1 Corinthians chapter number 11. 1 Corinthians chapter number 11 and verse number 31. 1 Corinthians chapter number 11 and verse number 31. It says, for if we would judge ourselves, we should not be judged. But when we are judged, we are chastened or corrected of the Lord, that we should not be condemned with the world. So you say, look, if we would judge ourselves, then God wouldn't have to judge us. If we would judge ourselves, chasten ourselves, discipline ourselves, then God wouldn't have to do it. Okay? A good definition that I read of self-discipline is the willingness to perform the acts that are beneficial to us for whatever reason we don't want to perform. There's things we should do that it would be good for us, it's the right thing to do, but for whatever reason we don't want to do it. Self-discipline is when you do those things that you don't want to do. Okay? And we need to understand, you see, self-discipline, it's not a genetic thing. No one is born with it. How do you know that? Because have you ever seen a self-disciplined, toddler? No, they're not. No one's born with it. It's not something that comes naturally to us without us putting effort in. Look, if you were back at Proverbs chapter number 6. Proverbs chapter number 6 and verse number... Proverbs chapter 6 and verse number 6. Famous verses here. Proverbs chapter 6 and verse number 6 says, go to the ant, thou sluggard, consider her ways and be wise. So notice here, the sluggard is told to look at the ant and learn from her. Okay? Go to the ant thou sluggard, consider her ways and be wise, which having no guide, overseer or ruler. You see, the ant doesn't have a boss telling it what to do. Doesn't have an overseer, doesn't have a ruler. But what does it say? Provideth her meat in the summer and gathereth her food in the harvest. You see, the sluggard is told, look at the ant, learn from her. Although she doesn't have a boss, she does what she should do. You know, she's her own boss, is what the ant is. The ant, she has self-discipline. Now, I'm not just using PC language, I'm using she all the time. The Bible uses feminine for the ant. And it's interesting that, like if you look at, do you know that worker ants are actually female? Just like with worker bees. So the Bible knew what it's talking about. I'm not sure that, you know, people back in the stage, I think they really knew what gender ants were and stuff like that. But no, it's quite true. It's quite accurate. But the thing about it is, the self-disciplined person, like this ant, is the person who rules over their spirit. It's the person who does what they should do when they should do it, whether they feel like it or not. Because what do you feel like doing? You feel like doing what's easy, but the thing is, the thing that's easy, the thing that's got the most appeal to you, is often the wrong thing to be doing. I remember one time I was at soul winning, and I was at the front of someone's house. They had like a conservatory, and it was a hot sunny day, and so I was sort of standing in this conservatory. I was standing just inside in the shade, and I was standing there, the sun's beating down on me. I'm just absolutely roasted. I felt like I was in a desert. You know, it was just scorching. But I was there preaching the gospel to someone. And I was thinking, what would I rather be doing? I'd rather be sitting at home, relaxing in the shade, having a nice cool drink. Isn't that what I rather would be doing? But what should I be doing? What should I be doing? That's the thing, you know. It's when you do what you should do, whether you feel like it or not. Because did you know, and this is especially true in the early days, do you think I felt more like going out soul winning or not going out soul winning? I mean, the early days when you had all that fear, then it's just all these extra things. And later on, you know, you get over the fear. Because if you just do the thing that you fear, the fear goes away because you realise, what was I scared of? There's nothing to be scared of. So you do it over and over and the fear goes away. But guess what? It would still be easier to sit on the couch. It would still be easier to put your feet up and do nothing. Okay? Now, the Bible itself doesn't use the word self-discipline, but what it does use, uses words like diligence. It talks about a diligent person. And it also uses the opposing words. It uses words like being slack or being slothful or a sluggard. I mean, look if you would, for example, you're there in Proverbs. Look at Proverbs chapter number 10. Proverbs chapter number 10 and verse number 4. Proverbs chapter number 10 and verse number 4 says, "He becometh poor that dealeth with a slack hand." So this is the person who lacks self-discipline. What's going to happen to them? They're going to be poor. "But the hand of the diligent maketh rich." The person who's diligent is the person who has self-discipline. They are diligent in that they discipline themselves to do what they should be doing. And what ends up happening? They end up becoming wealthy. Now, we know the Bible says, you know, labour not to be rich, cease from thine own wisdom. The Bible warns about the dangers. But the fact is, if we do what the Bible says to do, then we're going to be better off as opposed to struggling in poverty. Okay? Look at chapter number 12. Look at chapter number 12 and verse number 24. Proverbs chapter number 12 and verse number 24. It says, "The hand of the diligent shall bear rule, but the slothful shall be under tribute." Well, doesn't that sound a bit like the ant? Remember, the ant didn't need to. It didn't need to have a ruler or an overseer. And the fact is that because if you won't discipline yourself to work, to do what you should do, then someone else will end up doing it. You know? Because children, don't they have someone disciplining themselves to make them do what they have to do? But when they grow up, they should learn how to discipline themselves so they don't need someone to tell them what to do. But many people grow up and they're still just like that child, and so they've got to have a supervisor that's on their case to make them do that. You know? I mean, a great example in the Bible, you think about Joseph. Remember Joseph, he was someone who was diligent. And what did he do? He rose to the top in Potiphar's house. He rose to the top in the prison. He rose to the top in Egypt itself. He was diligent. He had self-discipline. Okay? Look at, and of course the contrast is, but the slothful shall be under tribute. They're going to have to pay. You know, I mean, the fact is, there is actually a cost there's a cost to both. There's a cost to having discipline, and there is also a cost to not having discipline. You see, the cost to having discipline is something that you pay straight away. It's like the pain that you pay instantly. But there's also a cost to not having discipline, and that's something you don't pay until later. It's like, think about buying something. See if you go and buy something from a shop. Well, if you pay for it, you get the cash and you pay for it, you paid it, and that's it. But what about if instead you go and you just get it without paying for it? You get it on hire purchase or something. You get it on tick. Well, what happens then? Is there any cost straight away? No. But you still have to pay, but you pay for longer. And you pay more. You pay more because you keep paying. And often you end up getting this bill and that bill and you pay, and you just got so much to pay, I mean, I heard it said another way. They said that the pain of discipline is so much better than the pain of regret. Because if you discipline yourself up front, then it's done. You've paid for it. Say you want getting up early. You get up. It's painful to get up early, but once you're up, and it's up. But who's ever thought, I should get up early, I've got these things to do, and then you don't get up, and then you regret it, don't you? You regret it. Absolutely. Okay? Look at Proverbs chapter number 13. Proverbs chapter number 13 and verse number 4. Proverbs chapter 13 verse 4 says, "The soul of the sluggard desireth and hath nothing, but the soul of the diligent shall be made fat." So the sluggard, he desires stuff, but he doesn't get what he wants. Whereas the diligent person, it says the soul, they'll be made fat. They're full. Okay? Look at Proverbs chapter number 21. Proverbs chapter number 21 and verse number 25. Proverbs chapter 21 and verse number 25. It says, "The desire of the slothful killeth him." Why? "For his hands refuse to labour." He refuses to work. Verse number 26. "He coveteth greedily all the day long, but the righteous giveth and spareth not." Notice that. So the slothful person, the lazy person, the undisciplined person, the person lacking self-control, his desires his desires kill him. He refuses to labour. He refuses to work. But in contrast, the righteous person, which is like the diligent person, they give and spare not. Doesn't that remind us what we saw in Ephesians chapter 4? We're supposed to labour, working your own hands, so you may have to give to them that have need. Okay? Look at Proverbs chapter number 22. Proverbs chapter 22 and verse number 29. Proverbs chapter 22 and verse number 29 says, "Seest thou a man diligent in his business? He shall stand before kings. He shall not stand before mean men." If you're diligent, if you have self-control, if you have self-discipline, you will excel. You'll stand before kings. That's exactly what we saw happen with Joseph. Chapter number 27, verse number 23. Proverbs 27 and verse number 23. Proverbs 27:23 says, "Be thou diligent to know the state of thy flocks, and look well to thy herds. For riches are not forever, and doth the crown endure to every generation." So look, you need to be diligent. You need to discipline yourself. You might say, well, how can I be more self-disciplined? How can I do it? Firstly, make a decision. Decide that's what you want to do. See, for some people don't, no, I'm just not that sort of person. I don't want to be like that. Make a decision. But also, make your decision, make it beforehand. Make your decision beforehand. You see, because when it comes to making decisions, it's really easy. If you make a decision and you make it once, it lasts forever. That's a lot easier than make a decision, constantly having to do it. You see, I was reading about, there's been a lot of studies that have been done on willpower. And from the studies they've done, because you might think, I'd love to have lots of willpower. From what the studies have shown, it's not that people have differences in the amount of willpower they have. It's a case of you've got a limited amount of willpower. And when you spend your willpower, then it's spent. So what you need to do is spend it on the right things, instead of wasting it on other things. Okay? So make your decision, make it beforehand. I mean, think about, I've used this example before, the decision about going to church. Now, going to church is a decision I just made once. I never have to make it again. I never wake up and think, am I going to church today? Will I go to the service? No, you say, you have to because you're the pastor. No one will come and unlock. Okay. But that was but long before I was a pastor, I'd made that same decision. I was always there. I was always in church. Sunday morning, Sunday night, midweek Bible study, always. Okay? Now, it took me years to make that. But once I'd made it, when I made that decision, and it just makes it easier. I never have to exert willpower ever again, even thinking about it. You just make it. You make that decision. You commit to it. And the thing is, you understand, self-discipline in one area of life, or lack of self-discipline, can transfer to other areas of life. You see, if you're undisciplined in one area, that'll spread over here, and that'll spread over here. But if you discipline yourself, in an area, then that can move. This is one of the reasons why, just think about that whole willpower thing, that's one of the reasons why diets can actually help people lose weight. One of the reasons why diets can help people lose weight is because what they do is they plan out beforehand, this is what I'm going to eat, this is what I'm going to eat. And so then, I know what I'm having for lunch. I know what I'm having for lunch tomorrow, I know what I'm having for breakfast the next day, I know what I'm having, and it's all done. So they don't have to think. But if instead you arrive, it's mealtime now, what am I going to have? If you've got to choose then, you've got to use willpower to choose, I've got to choose the right food rather than the wrong food. But if you already made that a week ago, and you know exactly what it is, isn't it so much easier to eat healthy if you make your lunch the night before? It's a lot easier than think, what I want, open the cupboard, chocolate, biscuits, And so that's an important thing we need to understand, So what we've seen, just wrapping up, we've seen the importance of ruling over your spirit. Ruling over your spirit. And also building a wall. You see, if you're going to build a wall, we need to understand it's going to take strength. It's going to take strength. Back in Nehemiah chapter number 2, Nehemiah chapter number 2 and verse number 18, Nehemiah chapter 2 and verse number 18, Nehemiah 2:18, we go up to verse 17. It says, "Then I told them of the hand of my God which was good upon me, as also the king's words that he had spoken unto me. And they said, Let us rise up and build." They're going to build a wall. So they strengthened their hands for this good work. You're going to need to be strong. You're going to need to be strong. If you're going to build a wall, you're going to need to be strong. And understand, it's not a physical wall. See, Nehemiah was building a physical wall. I'm not talking about building a physical wall in our houses. What we're talking about, physical strength is good. Okay, we do need physical strength. But what we really need is spiritual strength. We need spiritual strength. So how do we get that spiritual strength? Well, I'm actually going to be preaching a bit about it tonight, but just to give you a quick preview, have a look at 1 John chapter number 2 and verse number 14. 1 John 2 and verse 14. 1 John 2 and verse 14. How do you get strength? 1 John 2:14 says, "I've written unto you fathers, because you've known him that is from the beginning. I've written unto you young men, because ye are strong, and the word of God abideth in you, and you've overcome the wicked one." Do you want to overcome the wicked one? Do you want to be strong? Then you need the word of God abiding in you. And we're going to be talking more about that tonight. Okay? It's important that we build a wall. It's important that we rule over our spirit. And the thing is, ruling over your spirit, having self-discipline, that is a decision that only you can make. No one can make you have that. Because notice the word self-discipline. It's self-control. Self-discipline. You're the only one that can do it. Someone else can't do it. Okay? You're the only person that decides. And it can be, as we said, it can be painful in the short term, but the long-term benefits are enormous. Turn, if you would, back to Joshua chapter number 1. Joshua, we're going to finish up. What's that?
God can do it.
Absolutely. But the thing about it is, God has told us. Look at this. Look at Joshua chapter number 1 and verse number 8. Joshua chapter 1 and verse number 8. It says, "This book of the law," this is God, He's telling us. He's saying, look, "This book of the law shall not depart out of thy mouth. But who shalt meditate therein? Thou shalt meditate therein day and night." Now, does that sound like that requires some sort of self-discipline, self-control? Meditate therein day and night. I want you to be in this book, meditating day and night, that thou mayest observe to do according to all that is written therein, for then thou shalt make thy way prosperous, and then thou shalt have good success. In other words, do this, meditate day and night, and then you'll prosper. Then you'll have good success. You see, because the thing about it is you don't see the benefits. Remember we talked about with discipline versus lack of discipline, the pain, you pay it immediately versus paying down the track. But the thing about it is, when it comes to reaping the rewards, when it comes to self-discipline, the rewards are down the track. Whereas the reward of just doing what you feel like doing, the reward is immediate. You go and eat the chocolate. That's an instant reward. Okay? Whereas if you don't eat it, do you see the reward instantly? You don't. I mean, remember when they went around Jericho? Remember they marched around? What happened? Nothing. The next day, what happened? They marched around. What happened? Nothing. Next day, what happened? They went around. Nothing. Remember they went again. So those first 6 days they went around, nothing happened at all. Now, obviously, in this case, this was because God had given them instructions, and on the seventh day, God was the one who made the walls fall down flat. Okay? God did that. But we can still see the principle there that they did this, and they did this, and they did this without a result. But down the track, there was a result. And it's the same thing when you discipline yourself to do something. You could think about someone disciplining themselves to practice their piano. You practice for one day, what difference did it make? No difference. The next day, no difference. But over time, it's going to make a big difference. You know? And that's the important thing, is that it says, as we saw at the start, Proverbs 25:28, he that hath no rule over his own spirit is like a city that is broken down and without walls. You might say, I feel like I lack self-discipline. And the fact is, every one of us lacks self-discipline in areas of our life. In some areas we might be better, in some areas we might be worse. But whatever areas we are, look, we're like a city that's without walls. It's in danger of being destroyed. We need to fix that up. We need to fix it up. We need to, just like Nehemiah did, we need to fix up that wall. Proverbs 16:32, he that is slow to anger, that's a great thing to apply on the squash court. He that is slow to anger is better than the mighty, and he that ruleth his spirit than he that taketh the city. Absolutely, we do need perseverance, definitely. But we need to decide we're going to do what God says to do. We're going to have to apply ourselves, apply our hearts to do what God says. And when we do that, then down the track, we will reap the rewards. Okay, but it's a decision. I can't make that for you. You can't make that for someone else. Now, obviously, when you've got children, you do make certain decisions for them. Train them up. But the fact is, at some point, they need to take that on board and choose to discipline themselves. And so that we don't need to discipline them anymore. It's the same thing with us and God. We should choose to discipline ourselves so that God doesn't need to discipline us. Let's pray. Gracious Lord, we thank you for your word. And Lord, I pray you'd help each one of us, myself included, to be more disciplined. To have rule over our own spirits. Not to be like a city that's broken down where enemy invaders can come in and just, set the city on fire. And help us, Lord, to have walls in our lives, walls of protection. Help us to get things out of our life. Let's take some things and chuck them out through that dung gate. And let's close up the walls. Let's seal up the breaches. And let's rule over our spirits, Lord, knowing that you give us the power. You give us the strength. If we'll use the means that you've given us, Lord. That we'll ask you. That we will be in your word. That we'll hide your word in our hearts. And that we'll take action on what we read therein, Lord. We thank you and praise you and love you. In Jesus' precious name. Amen.